there, my name is Marley and welcome to my channel, or welcome back. Today I'm filming my August wrap-up, so talking about all the books that I read in August, and I ended up reading 10 books this month, which is one of my better months of this year, so that's very exciting. Yay me. So I'll just briefly go through some stats on the 10 books that I read. So I'm just gonna quickly look at Storygraph, which is a reading website that generates a lot of cool stats for you. So 10 books read, which equaled 3,604 pages, give or take. The moods that it says that I read was mostly dark, emotional, tense, and mysterious, which is pretty typical for me. A look at the pacing of the books I read, 60% of them were actually medium-paced books and 30% were fast, with only 10% being slow-paced. As for the number of pages, 50% of the books I read were between 300 and 500 pages. I had 40% of the books I read that were under 300, and then only 10% were over 500. So I guess that's like one book. I read all fiction as always. And then for the genres that Storygraph says I read the most of, it was thriller, mystery, literary, and contemporary. And my average star rating for the month was 3.69. A couple additional stats to include. So as for format of the books I read 4 ebooks and 6 physical books. So that means I'm still doing a good job at getting through a lot of my physical TBR. Why is Peach just in the middle here? She can go to the side. Okay. For audience, I read 6 adult books, 1 new adult, and then only 3 YA. So yeah, now let's get into the books. As always, we'll talk about these in the order of my least favorite book to my most favorite book. So the lowest rated to the highest rated. Starting out, we have A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. Now, I think a lot of you guys may have watched my reading vlog this month where I read books to make me cry, as that video is doing pretty well view-wise for me. But basically, I chose to read A Little Life because it's a very highly talked about book and people always say it makes them absolutely sob. Essentially, what this one is about is we're following a group of guy friends in college and just all of their lives, but especially the main character, Jude, who has had a very traumatic and sort of mysterious childhood at the beginning. And so we really delve into what happened in his childhood, how that affects the rest of his life, dealing with all of that trauma and his friendships with the other boys and stuff like that. Now, before I read it, I knew it had a lot of trigger warnings. I knew people warned against reading it, and I read it anyways, but I have sort of been saying don't read it whenever I talk about it. I know some people commented on that blog of mine and said, I'm still intrigued to read it even though you said not to. I'm here to still say, like, don't read it. I ended up rating it a 2 out of 5 stars because the writing is absolutely beautiful. I would be interested potentially in reading more from this author just because clearly she has a gift for writing. Like, the writing style turned out to be really good and really quick to get through, considering this is a over 700 page book. You still can easily just get through the writing, but in terms of the actual content of the book, I just think she went too far with a lot of the graphic descriptions and the child abuse and sexual abuse that the character deals with. I think it went too far. I think it's not necessary. I think when people say it's torture porn and trauma porn, that's pretty accurate for this book. There's no way that this many bad things would happen to a single person. I'm not saying some of these experiences don't happen to people, but I just don't think this many things would happen to one person, and it's just really made me question why the author would want to write this and write this story. I also feel like it's a little bit problematic in terms of its representation of therapy. I feel like with all the trauma the character went through, they really should have had intensive therapy, and I just felt like the author's perspective was that she didn't really believe in therapy. The character never really committed to going, and I just don't think it was the best message. And as I said, it's a really, really long book, so I don't recommend putting yourself through that. Just the other day, I was thinking about this book again and literally cried again. I never cried a lot in the book, but you tear up a lot because it's just so upsetting. So I feel like I've talked enough about this book on my channel, so yeah. Next up, we have A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas. This is the, I guess, 3.5th book of the ACOTAR series. It is the kind of side novella that isn't super relevant to the plot, and I knew that going into it, but still because of that I didn't really rate it very high. I gave it 3 stars. Basically this is a fantasy romance series following our main character Vera, who at the beginning is this human girl in this not very well-off family, and then she ends up getting involved in these fairy matters, fairy politics, falling in love with fairies, and we kind of have a whole group of characters now that we're following, including some of Vera's sisters. So throughout all of the books so far, we've really only seen from Vera's point of view, but this is the book where we're getting other people's point of view as well. We're getting Rhysand, we're getting Nesta, we're getting Cassian, and it's sort of like a bridge before Court of Silver Flames, which is the 4th book that really follows Nesta and Cassian more, as far as I know. It was basically like a Christmas special. Like, you know when shows will just have like a random Christmas special and it's like just outside of the plot, it's just like cheesy, like not that much happens. Like that's kind of what this book is. It was nice to read a short book by Sarah J Maas, I will say that, but yeah, like not too much happens. It was just kind of fun to see our characters kind of all interacting, and I think to just sort of tease us for the next book. So I am very excited to read Court of Silver Flames. I just had a friend tell me recently though that it's like the steamiest book of all of her books though, so I'm a little worried about that, but still I really like Nesta and I'm intrigued to read more of her story. Next up we have Never Saw Me Coming by Vera Kurian, and this one I gave 3.5 stars. So this is a thriller. This was actually gifted to me by someone in my real life. I didn't really have this on my radar before then, but I quite enjoyed it. In case you don't know, we are following a group of psychopaths in this book, which I found a really unique concept. Basically at this university or college, there's this psychologist professor who's really focused on studying psychopathy, and so he runs this program where he recruits a bunch of kids who have been diagnosed as psychopaths to come to the school and be a part of his research study, and if they come and do that, they get free tuition. So that's kind of like an incentive for them. So we are following a few different POV characters who are in this program and at this school, including our more like main character Chloe, who actually is planning a murder. She's planning to murder one of her fellow students, but in the meantime some other murders start happening on campus that she did not commit, or maybe she did, right? But we don't know. So that's like the murder mystery of who's doing these murders on campus, while following these very, like, I want to say morally gray characters slash like bad characters, which I found very, very interesting. I really had a fun time with this book, as I do with most thrillers I read, to be honest. I think if you're a thriller lover, definitely check it out. Unfortunately, I do think the ending was just lackluster for me. I would have given this 4 stars if that had just delivered a little bit more, and like who the killer was and that whole twist and stuff, but I just felt a little bit disappointed with the ending. But I did have a really fun ride reading this book. It was interesting, kind of like rooting and liking characters that are psychopaths. And then I don't know about like the rep for that, as that is like a mental illness, but the author does have a PhD in social psychology, so I'm assuming it's pretty good rep in that department. But yeah. Alright, next up I read I Kissed Shara Wheeler by Casey Mcquiston. I read this for another vlog on my channel where I read for 24 hours, and this is one of the 2 books that I completed in that time. Check out that vlog if you haven't. This is a YA queer contemporary book following the main character. Is her name also Chloe? Another main character named Chloe. She grew up, I think, in more of like an accepting city, like maybe in California or something, raised by 2 mothers, and then they moved to this more like smaller, more closed-minded town. And so she's been going to school here, and she is queer. I believe she is bisexual, and she's very like school focused, wants to be the valedictorian, that kind of thing. She has a enemy at the school named Shara Wheeler. They're competing to be valedictorian together, and then Shara randomly kisses Chloe and then disappears, and then Chloe gets obsessed with finding her. She wants to figure out, why did she kiss her, why did she disappear, where did she go? She teams up with a couple other guys who also have crushes on Shara Wheeler and also kissed her recently, and so it's like a cute little team up of trying to find Shara, and she's leaving them little notes and clues around the town, around the school, for them to find. I think I like this more than most people. I definitely see the criticisms, like I wasn't having the best time for all of it, but I think by the end it just really got me. I teared up. I thought it was beautiful. I like when all the characters kind of come together, and I really like the dynamic between the main couple in this book. So I did give it 4 stars. So for that crying reading vlog, I also read A Man Called Ove by Fredrik Backman, and I gave this one 4 stars too. This is following a grumpy old man named Ove, and his wife has recently passed, so he's really not enjoying life anymore. And we're really just hearing about his life, and we're seeing flashbacks to him growing up and all of the hardships he kind of dealt with, and then seeing him meet his wife and how that was such a great time for him when he was with her. And then of course we're seeing the current timeline with him grieving her. He's a pretty unlikable fellow for most of the book, but what really was the draw in this book for me was seeing his character development and seeing him grow to care for these neighbors and people who he was interacting with, and start to enjoy their company and be a nicer person and actually build these other relationships. It was really beautiful, but that is essentially the plot. Like, it's not too crazy of a plot or anything like that. I think if you like Fredrik Backman's other books, you'll definitely like this. It deals with like mental health themes like his other ones do, but then it's also very funny like his other ones as well. So it's really just a great mixture. You should fly through this. Definitely recommend. Another 4-star read for me this month was The It Girl by Ruth Ware. This is her newest release. She's a pretty popular and actually a pretty hit or miss thriller author. That's how most people describe her. This has a copy and paste plot as In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. It's about this girl woman, who is in this friend group back in college, and her best friend slash roommate was murdered. Now it is years later, she's married, she's pregnant, and this journalist comes a knock-in saying that he thinks that the person who was arrested for this crime was actually innocent. And what's interesting about that is that he actually just recently died in jail. The main character, whatever her name is, Hanya, has just really been thinking about the case a lot because it's her testimony that made that man go to jail. So she's feeling very guilty, like what if she helped convict the wrong man for the crime? So she starts trying to like investigate what really happened, think back to the college years, like what actually happened, who actually killed this girl, April. Just with every Ruth Ware book, I always really enjoy the lead up and I guess the build up of the mystery, uncovering all the clues, learning about all the characters and sort of players, and constantly theorizing about who I think did it. I will say the person I suspected from the beginning was the killer. So another pretty predictable book from Ruth Ware. Like, she did some things to really try and make you think it was other possibilities, and sometimes, you know, I would start thinking other things, but I always did suspect the person who ended up being the killer. But I feel like it was very enjoyable, a little bit basic, but yeah, like an enjoyable thriller, 4 stars. I would recommend, but maybe just like lower your expectations a little bit. Like, it might be a little bit predictable. Definitely not as good as In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. I think that book was, I guess, this plot done better, but at least it was different from that book, so you don't have to feel like you're reading the exact same thing. But yeah, I enjoyed this. Another book I read this month was Normal People by Sally Rooney. Again, I read it for that Reading Sad Books video, and I read Sally Rooney's other book, Conversations with Friends, last month, which you may have seen, and I really enjoyed that book. I found that I really liked her writing style. I really related to her characters. I found the same exact thing with Normal People, and so I gave it 4 stars as well. In this book, we are following 2 characters, Mary Ann and Connell. They grew up together. Mary Ann was more of the rich one, but she was not popular in school. She was made fun of a lot, not cool at all. Connell was a bit of the opposite, where he was raised by a single mother, a lower income family, but he was pretty popular at school and had a lot of friends. They don't interact at school because of those differences, but Connell's mother works for Mary Ann's parents, so that's why they know each other outside of school and develop a relationship outside. And I'll just say it's a romantic relationship that they form, as you can imagine, a romantic and sexual relationship, and they hide it from people. And then we just kind of see them continue into college and continue seeing that dynamic between the 2 of them. Basically, as I said in my vlog, they are just constantly having miscommunication due to, you know, a bunch of different factors. Like, yeah, the fact that they grew up with different economical like situations and social situations. They both, especially one of them, has a lot of like trauma. They both have mental health issues, depression. Like, it deals with all of these sort of things, and I just find the themes she writes about so interesting. There are a lot of carryover themes between Conversations with Friends and Normal People, a lot of similarities, but I still enjoy both of them. I find it I found it so enjoyable to read, even if it's like literally she's just talking about very mundane everyday life things. For some reason I'm reading it like it's a thriller, like I can't stop. So I'm really excited to keep reading Sally Rooney's books. I know she has one more that's out that hopefully I can read soon. But yeah, this definitely was a sad book, but it was more like sad throughout the novel due to all of the depression and stuff that the characters deal with. But I definitely recommend this book and her books, and I'm excited to watch the TV show for this. All right, then I return to the world of Death Note. This is a manga series I have been slowly working my way through. I'm a big fan of the anime, so of course I wanted to read the manga. This is about Light Yagami, who is a high schooler. One day he comes across this Death Note. So it is a notebook, basically, that when you write a name in it, that person dies. So this is kind of like a thriller, fantasy, horror kind of manga series, which are my favorite to read. Basically, Light just starts using the Death Note, killing people, killing criminals because he thinks that's like the right thing to do. But then this Detective L is hired to try and find who this killer is. They call Kira, and so it's very much a cat and mouse game, and there's a lot of cool like twists and things that go on because these are two very smart characters trying to like catch each other and defeat each other kind of thing. So far I probably would enjoy the anime more. It is a lot of dialogue to read, so I feel like it's kind of just nicer to watch it, but I am still really enjoying reading the story and experiencing it again. I read volume 6, which I gave 5 stars to. It was probably one of my favorite parts of this story, and then I read volume 7, which I gave 4 stars to. It's kind of moving into like the second half of the series, which I don't think I enjoy as much, but I also feel like I don't remember it as much from the anime, so hopefully it'll be a little bit more surprising to me as I continue this. But I think I'm just gonna continue to really just slowly read it, so I don't know when you'll see this pop up again on my channel. I did enjoy it while I read these 2 volumes, and I would recommend it if you're into manga. And then finally, my favorite book of the month, and I guess my only other 5-star besides Death Note, was Rock Paper Scissors by Alice Feeney. I did also read this for that 24-hour reading vlog that I mentioned, so if you want to see my in real-time thoughts, you can go check that out. But this was my first book from Alice Feeney, and she's a pretty popular thriller author that I really want to get to the rest of her books. But this is following a husband and wife who, of course, are kind of in a rocky place, not really having a great time in their marriage right now, so they go on this sort of weekend getaway to this snowy retreat, which is very creepy. It's basically like an abandoned church or something, I think it was. So there's definitely ominous vibes there. Something interesting about the husband is that he, I forget what the term was called, but he can't recognize faces. So that kind of adds an interesting element into the story as well. We are also seeing flashback chapters through letters that the wife is writing to the husband throughout their marriage. So we're getting those flashbacks of like how they got together and like how their marriage has been up until this point. Then obviously like creepy weird things start happening. It seems like maybe they are not alone, maybe someone else is there. It seems like maybe the husband and wife are trying to kill each other here. Like they have a lot of secrets in their marriage, and I feel like I'm struggling to kind of like explain the plot without spoiling things. But I thought this had really great twists and turns. As I love in thriller books, you're really able to theorize about all these different things you think might be going on between the current day stuff and the flashbacks, and there was some stuff I really didn't expect. One of the things I've seen people say as a criticism is that it's like very unrealistic, and also there's plot holes, which looking back, I can see what you guys mean. I can see what you mean. Some of them are quite far-fetched, and I was like, oh, interesting. Like, yeah, I remember thinking like, yeah, how is that possible? But you know what? It was fun. It was a really fun time. I read it in one day. Obviously, it was in that 24-hour reading blog. And I think even if I wasn't forcing myself for that reading blog, I think I still could have easily read it in a day and would have. So really recommend that one. I just love thrillers. I just really love thrillers. Okay, that is the end of my wrap up. Thank you guys for watching. Definitely leave me a comment if you have thoughts on any of these books. And of course, subscribe if you have not already. I will see you in my next video very, very soon. Hope you have a great last few weeks of the summer, and see you next time. Bye.